Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be able to have this conversation with you this evening in this town hall. My name is Lance Knuckles. I have the privilege of being the Executive Deputy Director of St. Louis Development Corporation, leading our Strategic Growth and Development Division. And with me, I have my colleague, Cornita Robinson, who is one of my neighborhood managers who has been working really hard to ensure that we bring programs to businesses here in St. Louis. It is my honor and a privilege to have this conversation. This evening session is focused on making sure we provide information about how we move forward the City of St. Louis Small Business Grant Program and ways for businesses to access these resources and to fundamentally gain access to move their businesses forward. We will have a presentation today. We encourage you all to ask your questions in the Q&A section within the chat function or the Q&A section of the platform, and we will circle back to answer those questions as we move forward. At the end, we will have a Q&A, and during that time, we will circle back to those questions within the Q&A and then open questions up for those who are attending in this platform this evening. So without further ado, I'll pass things over to my colleague, Cornita Robinson, who will take us through the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Lance. Let me go ahead and get it opened here. Thumbs up if you can see it, Lance. Thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening, everyone. This will be a brief presentation. Then we'll touch on the application a bit, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So the Small Business Grant Fund, we will officially launch next week, and we'll touch base on a few of those events that we have coming up in just a moment. But just a little overview, this is a grant that is funded by the state and local fiscal recovery funds, and we will have about, the goal is for each small business to receive a grant fund totaling in $5,000. These are some important dates just to remember. And again, we'll touch base on these various dates and events in the next few slides. This week, we opened up the eligibility criteria online. That web link was on the first slide, and then it'll be on following slides as well. On April 4th, we'll host an in-person event, and then we'll have other in-person events to follow after that. And beginning April 14th, we will open our online portal, and we'll have additional in-person events. This is the eligibility requirement for the grant fund. Just to pull out a few, in order to qualify for this grant, in order to qualify for a small business for this grant, you have to have 25 or fewer employees. This grant is specifically for businesses that are located in the city of St. Louis. And there are additional goals for us to meet. I believe, Lance, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 75% of businesses that are located in HUD qualified census tracts. And so that are remaining will go to other businesses that are located in the city of St. Louis. And then these are additional eligibility requirements. They're here on this presentation, but again, you have access to this directly on our website as well. The use of funding for these grants, this is a list of all the eligible items that can be paid for through these grant funds. And so just to name a few: payroll, rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. Again, this is a grant, but these are the requirements for the funding for this grant. And we will have, you will see in the application when you go to apply, there is a portion that gives us permission to audit if necessary within the next few years if you are awarded this grant. But that's just, again, to make sure that these funds are used in compliance with these guidelines. To touch briefly on the required documents for this grant fund and the application process, you are required to submit a signed copy of your W-9. Then with the business license, there's either a active business license or an approved CBI form. The CBI form can be found on the website as well. And that is essentially a document that you would take to the license collector's office and the collector of revenue office to make sure that you have an active business license and you're up to date on all taxes. Last but not least, one of the other things that would need to be submitted would be a bank or income statement demonstrating adverse economic impact resulting from COVID-19. But I do want to clarify that if you are in a HUD qualified census tract that was mentioned under the eligibility requirement, you are not required to submit a bank statement or income statement. That would be for those businesses that are not located within the HUD qualified census tracts. If you are not sure if you are in a HUD qualified census tract, on our website, you will be able to access a link that will allow you to plug in your address, and it takes you directly to your address and lets you know if your business is within a HUD qualified census tract. Before you apply, we strongly advise you to take the CBI form and go to the collector of revenue office and a license collector's office. Like I said, you do have to have an active business license, and you do have to make sure that you are current on all taxes. And so that CBI form would be your best bet in making sure that all of that information is up to date, because after you apply, we'll still have to verify that information. And I also want to make sure to state that not only does your business license need to be active when you apply, it needs to be active in order for you to receive those grant funds as well. As I mentioned, we have a few different opportunities to apply. And if you look at if you see the website here at the bottom, there is more information that's located on the webpage. But to pull out a few things, beginning next Monday, April 4th, there will be an opportunity to apply in person at the Central Library from 9:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. That same application assistance event is going to take place again on Wednesday, April 6th from 9:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Each of these events will be an opportunity for you to apply with a hard copy. We'll verify, make sure that you have your documents, and then we'll take those documents and upload them into our online portal. These events are limited to the first 20 participants per event. And that's going to be the same when we move over to the Thursday, April 14th events as well. The difference between the events on April 4th and 6th as compared to the events on April 14th through the 19th is that the events for the 4th and 6th, you don't have to have your application completed because we understand if you don't have the ability to print it out and things like that. We will have hard copy applications on site for April 4th and 6th. However, April 14th, 15th, 18th, and 19th, you will need to bring an already filled out application. For both of these events, you'll also need to bring all of your required documents. Those documents, again, are W-9, a signed copy of your W-9, a copy of your either CBI, approved CBI, or a copy of your business license. And if you are not in a HUD qualified census tract, a business or income statement showing adverse, the adverse income, a difference in your income due to COVID-19. Last but not least, on April 14th, our online application portal will open. We're strongly advise everyone to apply by April 20th. As you see, we have a lot of in-person opportunities. And so the portal will close and we'll stop accepting applications when we get to 1,100 applicants. And that's because we know that we only have the ability to fund approximately 900 applicants. So I am going to pull up an application for us to take a look at an application very quickly. Okay, so this is a copy of the paper form of the application. It has all of the same information that we went through this presentation. And in addition to that, we get down to the application portion. For those of you that may have applied for the 2020 CARES Act funds, this application is only slightly different. We wanted to make sure that we added fields and questions that were more inclusive than previous rounds, and get a little bit more information on your businesses. The application is pretty straightforward, but we are having opportunities again for assistance for those that need it. One of the things that I want to touch on is that while it's not necessarily in your face at the top, I still want to point out that you still need to make sure that you submit the required documentation when you bring in your application, when you come to apply on the 4th or the 6th. And there'll be an opportunity to submit these documents online if you want to wait till the application portal opens. If you do the online version, or even if you come in person, we unfortunately will not be able to accept those applications without the required documentation. Without that required documentation, the application will be considered incomplete and you'd be recommended to reapply. With the online portal will not allow you to submit your application unless you upload those required documents. That is it for the presentation. Again, if you have any questions regarding the application after we finish here today, please feel free to look on our website here and also email us at sldc-grants@stlouis-mo.gov. And we can open the floor to questions, Lance.
So thank you, Cornita. I will begin questions. We have a series of questions in the Q&A that I would love to just share to make sure we have some key responses. I think the first question was from ArtsWorks, and the question was, are nonprofit organizations able to apply? And the answer is yes, because we do see COVID-19 impacting small businesses, and nonprofits are a service providing organization to community and our strategic partners to ensure that our residents grow and thrive. So the answer to that question is yes. I have another question that came in the Q&A section. The question is, why is there a lag between in-person application and online applications? Everyone should have an equal opportunity to apply at the same time. This is a great question. Based upon history and understanding access to technology, to ensure an equitable process, we wanted to make sure that those residents and business owners who may not have access to technology, which is real for a number of our businesses here in the city of St. Louis, that we provide an opportunity for businesses to be able to apply and participate and not be burdened or feel like they can't compete with those that have access to technology. And so I appreciate the question. However, the lag time is about providing equity to businesses that may not have access to technology. As with federal PPP programs and other programs, our communities have been most adversely impacted by accessing information because of the broadband gap that we have in accessing the internet. So hopefully that answers your question, and we'll make sure that we can provide some responses on the webpage around these questions that came up today. Another question from the website: why does the grant exclude realtors? The grant excludes realtors by federal legislation, speaking to businesses that are impacted by the stay-at-home orders. And it was deemed that realtors were not necessarily impacted the same way as a business that required people to come into a space to secure those services. I definitely understand your thoughts as being a taxpayer and things of that nature, but these are guidelines that came down to us as these funds had some guidelines that came to us as a part of our city being a recipient. I'm going to go, there's a few more questions. I'm going to go to some live questions here. We have quite a few questions coming into the chat. So I'm going to try to diversify our responses. Let's jump down here. Do you need all 3 years of statements? For a business that is not residing or operates within a HUD qualified census tract, you would not need to have all 3 years of statements. You would simply need to communicate one statement at one point in time that shows income and or revenue, and another statement that shows a decrease or incline of that revenue. We're not trying to require businesses to have 3 years of financials to prove every single moment in time where there's been an adverse impact. Trying to ease some of the implication and protocols to ensure businesses have access. And yes, Mr. Holman, we will be sharing information on the portal, the website. This information will be provided there, and we'll make this presentation available on the website as well for folks who want to access this presentation. Let's see here. I want to scroll down. Oh, here's a question from Mrs. Smith. How do I get the CBI form? Great question. On the landing page on the St. Louis Economic Development Corporation website, you will see at the bottom of the page the ability to download the application, both in English and in Spanish. You will be able to download the CBI form, as well as you will be able to download the W-9 form. So we're again trying to make the documents that are required accessible for all of our businesses to access the information to participate. So I'm going to pause and see if we're able to have questions come from the audience. If not, I'll continue to do questions from our chat function. Are we able to take questions live?
Yes, they will need to raise their hands. The attendees need to raise their hands if they have questions, and you will direct them to receive the questions out.
Thank you. So if you have a question that you would like to speak out loud, by all means, please raise your hand and we will do our very best to get to you. While we wait for those responses, we have a question from our esteemed Councilwoman, Ms. Clark Hubbard. And the question is, are in-home or virtual online businesses able to apply or do you have to be brick and mortar? Great question. And the answer is all businesses do apply. Virtual businesses, if your address is your home and you are in the city and you are in a HUD qualified census tract, etc., all those things do apply for at home and or virtual businesses based upon the address of where your business is located. See here, can you please? So one question we have, can you please tell us roughly where the area is that covers the HUD census tracts? The HUD qualified census tracts geographically covers most of North City and then kind of slides like a banana, if you will, down to portions of southeastern part of our city, down in the Patch, Carondelet, and other areas in the southeastern part of the city as a kind of high level geographic areas. If you go onto the website, there is a link that you can click and it's about identifying where you live. You can insert your address of your business into that and it will take you to a map and locate you within that map, whether or not you are in a HUD qualified census tract or not. So we hope that that tool is going to be useful to help businesses understand where they sit, which then can inform what documentation you might need to bring with you or have with you to apply for the program. So another good question from Mr. Harold is, when may I access the application? The applications, again, if I'm correct, Ms. Cornita, will be available online starting tomorrow. For folks to start to download and get prepared for the events coming up on the 4th and the 6th.
That is
that correct, Ms. Cornita?
That is correct.
Okay, I thought so. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience at this point? If you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll do our best to open the mic and allow you to ask your question.
Mr. Knuckles, do you want me to just give you the order? They have their hands raised.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
So we have Miss LaDonna Smith.
Ms. LaDonna, go ahead.
Hello. I wanted to know, I own 2 businesses in the city. Am I able to apply for both or just only one?
You are able to apply for both. More than likely, because of the limited amount of slots, you would probably only be able to be awarded for one of your businesses. But I cannot tell you that you cannot apply for both.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. Do we have another question? Would someone like to raise their hand?
Tamika.
Hello, I'm Tamika Steigers. I have several questions. How many businesses are there in the city of St. Louis that are licensed?
Actually, I don't have that. I can't answer that question right offhand. But we do know there's a significant number of businesses that would fit the criteria for this grant program. I couldn't tell you the exact number.
So it's more than 900?
Yes, ma'am.
And so how do you decide who gets the funds?
So this
Who makes the
program,
decision?
yes, ma'am, I can answer that question. There is an advisory committee or selection committee made up of SLDC staff and leadership that will review applications. This program is a first come, first served basis. And so we will be tracking towards the first applicants to get them qualified. If they meet the criteria, we will move them forward. And if folks don't meet the criteria, we will then continue to accept applications from those that meet the criteria.
Okay, I see a lot of issues arising with this process, being that there's only 900 and there are so many funds that were allocated to St. Louis City And businesses are struggling, have been struggling. We've been in this pandemic for 2 years. To me, the funds are late. I know there's a lot of things that have been going on, but I don't see the equity that you talked about in this process. I don't see any of those things based on how you guys are rolling it out. So I don't know what decision makers came up with the process, but it's not equitable, and to have only 900 allotted when businesses are suffering, and the city knows how many businesses are actually eligible because we have to have an active business license. So I'm just saying that with all the funds and with all the waiting, businesses are suffering, and I think that there could have been some different things done to allocate these funds.
Tamika, thank you so very much for your question and that perspective. Do understand that businesses are struggling in our city. We're doing our very best to make sure that those who are most impacted are getting access. And unfortunately, there is a limited amount of funds that were allocated through the resources coming to our city to support this specific program. But great question. I thank you for your commitment to our city. Are there any other questions? I see Ms. Hubbard.
Shameen Clark Hubbard.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, good evening. Thank you. First, thank you for having this. And I would like that it'll be able to be shared because I had a few constituents that text me that I was reminding them about them and they couldn't get on, but they really need this information. So I'll just share one of the questions because I know you answered the other one in the chat. So for business owners that clearly, again, have been going through the pandemic, what if they are current on payment plans for their taxes? Are they still eligible or do you have to be at a zero balance on your taxes?
So if someone has a quality, I want to answer this question correctly. And if someone has a current business license and they're paying on taxes and have a payment plan, I believe those businesses would still be eligible to apply.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. And then I know I didn't read the exact eligible businesses, but just for speaking out loud purposes now, are daycare centers eligible?
I believe so.
Okay. All righty. Thank you so much. And anything else we can I'll tell them to submit through the portal.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for being with us.
Okay. Alonzo Harris.
Mr. Harris, go ahead, sir. Mr. Harris, are you there? If you are, you're still on mute. So, Mr. Harris, we'll circle back, my friend. You might be having a little technical difficulty, but I see we also have Philip. Philip, can you step into the room with us, please, sir?
Yes, can you hear me fine?
Yes, sir, I can. Thank you.
Good evening. How is everybody doing? I have a three-part question. I'm familiar with the Facade program. It's an excellent program. And there are two different ways I know that they do allot the money to business individuals. They ask you to do the development first and then they receive the money. Or if you have every T crossed and every dot pointed on an I, they may give you the money. So in lieu of all that, or at this, I'm hoping at this point, Mr. Knuckles and Robinson, that we're at a growing stage because we know that money is coming into St. Louis. And the question I'm asking you is, like I said, a three-part question.
Okay. Yes, sir.
The money, go ahead.
No, I said yes, sir. First question.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, the money that's coming in, it doesn't seem to equate just to 900 individuals, because automatically the learning curve for somebody who has already received funds, they're going to be ahead of that learning curve. And you said directly, you want to help the most impacted. That's what you did say.
Yes,
so
sir.
I want to say, this program that we're working with has been around for several years, the SLDC program. What are we talking about growing at this point? Because it's a great idea, it seems to come with, because there's been a lot of money dumped on St. Louis. So you come with a great idea. So now what are some things that are going to be built out of it? If I don't get picked in the first 900, which is a small number, what do we have growing out of it?
So, Mr. Phillip, that's a great question. First of all, I want to just provide a little clarification that these funds that we're speaking about are not associated with the traditional facade program that has been administered by SLDC for several years. So I just want to make that point of clarification that these funds are from federal resources, from our state and local fiscal recovery funds that are a part of the response to COVID-19 and are not for facades. So just want to make that first clarification, my friend. I think second of all, for businesses that have not or may not make it through this process, if you will, we will continue to try to identify resources that come through our ARPA funds. I know there's some current legislation in Board Bill 82 that is being considered to support small businesses along major corridors. So we are actively working on programming other ARPA funds coming to this city to support small business. This is the first of those programs. And so we will continue to try to direct businesses to other opportunities as they come forward after we are able to allocate this first $4.5 million for this program specifically.
Okay, after that first 900 are blessed, is there any revenue? Is there any inroads of giving the next 5, 6 people, 100 people? Are there any inroads on that? Because the person has gone through the process. They just didn't get picked in the small number of 900. Have we thought about any of those different avenues to piggyback on?
Yes, sir. I think that I was trying to answer that question just now. Is there other rounds of ARPA funds that will be coming forward in the future, more specifically in Board Bill 82, that might speak to opportunities to support small business that are located along commercial corridors in North City, which identify and overlap with HUD qualified census tracts?
Okay. The HUD qualified census tract, do we believe those are totally accurate, or is that even an obstacle at the best of your discretion? Do you think that's an obstacle? Is that a real thing?
Yes, I think great question, my friend. HUD qualified census tracts are areas that are designated based upon socioeconomic impact. And as I mentioned, if you're able to go onto the website, you actually can enter in your address and be able to identify if you are located in the HUD qualified census tract. But I believe almost all of North City is within a HUD qualified census tract, and several parts of Southeast City are also in HUD qualified census tracts. So most of the areas that are not HUD qualified census tracts would be more than likely our central corridor and then moving to the southwest part of our city.
I truly appreciate you taking my questions. I have many more, but I want to allot time for other individuals who may have greater concerns and greater questions for you. Thank you, Mr. Knuckles and Ms. Robinson.
Thank you. Appreciate you. We'll slide back to Mr. Harris. We still see your hand up, sir. You are able to unmute and join us and ask your question. Okay, Mr. Harris, we're definitely going to keep trying to get you in. Do see your hand. But do we have any other hands raised? And if not, we can go to some of our questions in the Q&A.
You have Michelle. There are several other hands, Mr. Knuckles.
Okay.
So Michelle Bradley.
Michelle.
Hello.
Welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
We're well.
Quick question. So because my company has never received the funds, if other companies have received it, do the companies that have not received the funds take first priority over the ones that have before?
That is a great question, Mrs. Bradley, and that answer is yes.
Okay.
Businesses that have not, or businesses that have received CARES Act funds in previous grant rounds are eligible but we will be giving priority to support those businesses that were not benefactors during the CARES Act round of grant allocation.
Thank you.
Oh, great question. Thank you for asking.
Mhm.
We'll move to our next question.
EL.
Yes, good evening. I just want to find out about the deadline or the final deadline for the applications, April 14th. How quickly or soon after that will the grant notifications be made?
Great question. So first and foremost, we don't have a hard quote unquote deadline. We are encouraging businesses to apply before the 20th because of the limitation in the amount of resources that we have. And so we're trying to make sure that we front load the process. And then what we're doing now is we're hoping that from within 60 days, we will be able to communicate to any business and actually move a check for any business that has completed an online application or an application with us with all the correct documentation and materials and have returned a signed grant agreement, that we feel like that process would take up to 60 days to make sure that we're able to complete that midterm process of having a document signed before we release funds electronically.
I guess just following up to that, I heard you mention earlier that if the original application didn't contain the documentation, how quickly will you notify that, you know, that information so that it can be reapplied for?
Oh, great question, my friend. And so at the events on the 4th and the 6th, as well as application times for the 13th, 14th, 18th, and 19th, we will be verifying that information. So we won't allow people to walk away without knowing that the information that they have is the right information. And within the application portal, when it opens on the 14th, you are unable to submit the application without uploading all of the correct documentation that's required. So it's almost like a safeguard that if you don't have all the documentation on the online portal, it will not allow you to submit. That way we increase the opportunity of having complete applications to move the process more swiftly and get resources to business in a much more efficient way.
Excellent, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for asking.
Melinda.
Hello.
Good evening. We can hear you, Ms. Long.
Oh, thank you. I have a little simple question. You know, there are a lot of small businesses within the city of St. Louis, a lot of LLC. And you're right, because of this pandemic, it has affected those small businesses more than many of the larger ones. With that being stated, sometimes the owners of those LLC may have to pay for their expenses out of his or her personal accounts, because I'm sure you guys know, sometimes you rob Peter to pay Paul.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. So I remember seeing on the directions you had stated that you wanted a printout of the business's bank statements. He or she may have a bank statement, and along with the fact, when you have a business account at the banks, they charge you a little bit more than the average, personal account. So sometimes that LLC, he or she may not, show that much on that actual quote unquote business account if they have one, and if not, but they're paying for all those expenses and things out of his or her own personal account. Could that be? Yeah. How would you guys view that?
So that is
bank
a great,
statement. Yes,
that
sir.
is a great question, Ms. Long. And I think here's the reality. If a business owner is operating a small LLC and the impact of revenue isn't increasing, I think if someone has limited funds in their account and that's consistent and you can show the inability to grow and scale, that also constitutes adverse impact. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean that you went from, I'm going to say $9,000 of revenue down to 1,000. But if you have been unable to grow, that's also adverse impact. Does that make sense, Ms. Long?
Somewhat, but yet, however, I'm still looking at this business account that, that may be really low and been low for a long time. But however, the business owner, he or she has been having to keep afloat. Maybe for one reason or another, because when they're paid, they don't have the time and they can't afford the expense of transferring it from one account to the other. So they just pay the bill out of their own personal account. Yeah, I'm just hoping that the applicants with the small businesses, who may not have a business bank account under the business's name, can still apply. All the other paperwork is in order. They're registered with the city, state, all of that
Yes,
for
ma'am.
years. Yes, but there are
Yes,
just
ma'am.
yes.
So having had an LLC myself at one point in time, if there's a personal bank statement where the business is actually someone's using their personal resources to support the business, we'll take those things in consideration. So it's not
Okay.
a disqualification for a business to not have an official business account, because a number of sole proprietors are operating out of a personal checking account to take care of business.
Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
Oh, great question. I appreciate you taking the time to ask.
Thank you.
We have Miss Jackie Dace.
Hi, I had one question was already answered regarding the census tract, so I appreciate that. But I did have a question regarding the maximum applications. You said that it would be 1,100, and however you're going to take in person, how are you going to guarantee that you don't meet your maximum applications in person before those of us that are able to apply online?
Ms. Jackie, that is a great question. From a capacity standpoint, in the events that we're hosting, we're only having capacity to take in 100 to 120 applicants on any given day. And so based upon those days, we'll still have just slightly under 50% of the opportunities for folks to apply online. Again, trying to find a way to support our businesses that may not have access to technology to participate. And so I think the other part I'll say too is that in the selection criteria, we will be prioritizing 80% of these funds to support businesses that are located in HUD qualified census tracts. And we will also then do our very best to make sure that we have a diverse mix of the types of industries that we support. So we're not supporting just businesses in one kind of business sector. And so I hope that answers your question, but I believe we'll be just right about 50%, a little bit more maybe, if we actually have full capacity at the events that we had planned to hold to support residents and businesses that don't have access to technology.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Rebecca, you have a question for us.
Hi, yes. I'm curious if if your business is located in a HUD tract, would it be beneficial to also include a statement showing the adverse effects from COVID as well? Is that necessary?
Miss Rebecca, that is a great question. If you use the locator and your address shows in a HUD qualified census tract, we will be geocoding that on our side. And if you are in a HUD qualified census tract, the federal government has deemed that you have been adversely impacted. So the additional information around bank statements are not required for businesses that locate and operate within a HUD qualified census tract.
I understand it's not required, but do you think it would be helpful?
I won't tell you that you can't. It's not a requirement based upon how the program is designed to support those who are most impacted in the HUD qualified census tracts.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, great question though. Marvin Steele, you have a question, my friend.
Yes. First of all, let me just say that I appreciate you, Mr. Knuckles, and also Ms. Robinson. We have a Black Chamber of Commerce in St. Louis, the Heartland St. Louis Black Chamber of Commerce. I'm its board chairman. We also have a business incubator at 929 North Spring with 23 businesses located in that incubator, really growing and thriving and moving forward. So on their behalf, I have some questions. And one is a business license required? Because these are relatively either new startups or businesses that are new to the city of St. Louis. And the deadline is looming. So even though they've applied for a business license, must they have that business license when they apply for the grant? One, and two, are there any income limitations? Even though there's an employment limitation, less than 25, but is there an income limitation on businesses that are applying?
Mr. Steele, two great questions. I'll answer the first question. If a business has applied for their business license and has verification of that application being submitted, that would constitute the documentation that they would bring and be able to upload in that space of having a approved business license. So we're not going to penalize a business who is in the process of getting their license secured.
Great.
Second of all, there is no income criteria on these funds in any way, shape, fashion, or form.
Terrific. And again, I thank you both for what you're doing. And so at some point, I would love to be in touch with both you, Carnita, and Mr. Knuckles about what we're doing with our incubator in the city of St. Louis.
We'll make that happen, Mr. Steele. I definitely appreciate you and the work that you do. And this isn't a question that someone has asked, but I'm going to just respond and share this now. We talk about 25 employees, that if you have all part-time employees, we're talking about 25 full-time positions. So if you have 50 part-time people, you still qualify for the number of employees as it relates to that statistic or qualification. Just want to be really clear that it's 25 full-time employees. So you may have more than 25 part-time employees and you will still qualify for the program. So I know we have about 5 minutes left. We want to make sure that one, we respect time of all of your businesses. I know you all are working hard and taking out time to understand how this opportunity might support your organization. And so I'm going to yield the floor again and see if we have any additional questions before we circle back. I believe we have a few in the Q&A that I want to scroll and make sure that we've either one responded to in some way, shape, fashion, or form, or that we need to answer that question.
Lance, we have several questions in the Q&A. I've responded to some just based on the ones that you've already answered, but I think the other ones, it would be good for us to actually answer out loud.
Okay, let's see here. Would they be ones that don't have an answer? So the 12 open questions? Okay, thank you, Cornita. I will jump in here. Second grant last year. So there's a question I want to it says, if a business received PPP and EIDL and second grant funding last year, can they apply for this time? You can apply. However, businesses that did not receive grant support in the last round would be given priority over applicants who were. So you are eligible, but those who did not receive funds last year are prioritized over those that did. Can you state it? So can you state again what you said about the financial docs a qualified city business needs? So for a business that is located in a HUD qualified census tract, you do not need to provide any financial documentation. For businesses that are not located and operate in a HUD qualified census tract, you could use bank statements that showed a decrease in income and or revenue. You could use your P&L if you have that. You could use bank statements that communicate a loss in revenue and deposits. So we're not really prescriptive, just some way to verify that there has been an adjustment in how you've been able to operate and finance or fund your business. From tax return, let's see. So must all businesses have a business license, even if it's not required? I think for businesses that are sole proprietors that may not have a required business license, we will be able to verify that as you submit. And so again, I'm going to circle back to a question from Mr. and Mrs. Clay. My business is not in the HUD qualified census tract. Am I ineligible to apply? You are eligible to apply. You would just have to provide financial documentation to prove, like I just mentioned, some form of adverse impact to substantiate that qualification. So we have a question from Stephen. How can I get CBI approval? If you download the CBI form and go to the business license office, they can actually help get that information verified for you, and be able to send you or give you a signed copy stating that you are in good standing. And then you would bring that documentation either to one of the events and or upload that as a part of your application. Karma, I'll answer this question. I think we answered it before, but want to be clear. The question is, if you received your business license during the pandemic, will you still qualify? Yes, ma'am, you will still qualify. We are not disqualifying startup businesses for starting their journey during the pandemic. You as well just had a different adverse impact than those who may have been in business before. So you do still qualify. So I have a question from Ms. Leslie Christian. Still want to know how they are accepting these early applications, and can you only go in person if you don't have technology? You can, I want to make sure I answer this question correctly. I still want to know how they are accepting these early applications. First part of the question. Can you only go in person if you don't have technology? So I think if you don't have access to technology, coming to one of those events is the best way to ensure that you participate and that your information is uploaded accurately for you to be included as a potential candidate for the program. And again, as I stated, is our hope and intent to provide informational sessions and application sessions in advance of the electronic launch, because we do know a number of our businesses may not have access to technology, and we want to ensure participation and inclusion for those businesses that may not have access to technology at their business location. Cornelia, did I capture all of them? Qualified census tract.
More have been rolling in as you've been answering.
Okay.
I know for one, do we need both the business license and the CBI form? And the answer to that is no. When you go to upload the document online, or if you bring in the application to us, you only need one or the other. You need an active business license or an approved CBI form.
That is correct. And so Mr. Jarmaine, the website, so on the City of St. Louis website, where the application portal is, there is a link for you to check. And so I think we will make this presentation will be live. We'll have this streaming. We'll also make it available on our website to get any questions answered. And we will have the presentation on the website as well that will have all the information that you might need. And hopefully I answered that question. Some documentation required. So Ms. Clay, I'll answer your question. What sort of documentation is required? I'm an in-home care and that it just moved on me. Where'd it go? Somebody uploaded the question and moved on me. Ms. Clay, again, if your business is located within a HUD qualified census tract, you would just need your business license or a completed CBI form and a W-9 that's signed and ready to go along with completing your application. So we are past time, but I do want to respect everyone's time. I do hope this has been informational. Cornita, did you have
Yes. Can you actually answer the question from Steve Swartz? He's actually asked that question twice and we haven't gotten to it yet about the eateries.
Okay. So here's the question. How will you deal with business license for eateries? They are issued every quarter after you pay your sales tax. Current licenses expire March 31st, and they won't send out the next quarter's license until the end of April. We would accept the license that expired for those businesses, and then we also can verify if that has been that documentation has been submitted to the business license office. So yes, we'll accept that license, knowing in certain industries, the cycle of where we're launching this program does not necessarily jive well with how you all are paying your taxes and fees. Okay, so it has been an honor and a privilege to be in this conversation with you all. We definitely look forward to seeing your applications come in. If you have questions, by all means, there's information to send an email to our organization. Please give us 24 to 48 hours to respond to you. We'll do our very best to answer all your questions. And I look forward to seeing some of you, hopefully, at some of our in-person events as we continue to support your success and growth here in the city of St. Louis. Cornita, do you have any closing comments that we need to cover from a housekeeping perspective?
Just one last thing. I would just like to direct everyone to our frequently asked questions portion on the website as well. We'll also update that to include some of the questions that we've received today. But I do want you all to be aware that that does exist on the website. So in case there are other questions that you might need answers to.
Thank you all so very much. With that, we will say good night and look forward to seeing you all at any of these events in the coming future. Take care and have a wonderful evening.